Hello, and welcome to another episode of The Power of Reinvention. I'm really excited, and I think I say this at the beginning of every show, so I think it's just part of the introduction at this point. But I get excited easily when I get to talk to incredible people all the time, especially on the topic of reinvention, life, business, all the nuances that help us create our fantastic lives. And my guest today is Shiv Singh. Hi, Shiv.
Kathy, thank you for having me on.
Well, I'm super excited to have you here, and this is going to be a really fun conversation. I'm sure we're going to have a huge following based on all the things that you're doing. And so let me share a little bit for our audience on what Shiv is up to and who he is. He is the CEO of Savvy Matters, and he and his team advise and educate on marketing with AI and business leadership, helping organizations navigate transformational change. He's also the co-founder of AI Trailblazers, a thought leadership platform dedicated to advancing responsible AI in business, and the author of 3 books, including Marketing with AI for Dummies. I mean, that is exploding, and we're going to talk a lot about that. I can't think of anything more relevant right now. I feel like every one of our conversations are consumed with that. His previous works include the award-winning Savvy, Navigating Fake Companies, Fake Leaders and Fake News, and Social Media Marketing for Dummies, which has been translated into 7 languages. Shiv has held executive roles at PepsiCo, Visa, and LendingTree, where, as Chief Marketing and Customer Experience Officer, he led a 150-member team and managed a $700 million media budget, driving significant advancements in brand development, customer acquisition, economics, and digital platforms. He also serves on the board of United Rentals, a Fortune 300 company with $15 billion in annual revenue and 30,000 employees. And he's also an investor in several AI companies. I just have to brag a little bit more about you. Sorry, if not me, then who? But his industry recognition includes Forbes CMO Next List, Adweek's Top 50 Marketers List, Ad Age's Media Maven List, the 100 Asian American Board Members List, an induction into the American Advertising Federation Hall of Achievement. So, wow, lucky me to have you here today, and lucky audience that we get to have this conversation, Shiv. Thank you again for being here.
Thank you for that very kind and very embarrassing
Well,
introduction.
isn't it funny? It's like, this is your life, and you hear this and you just go, wait, what? That's me? And it's
Yes.
really funny because I'm going to kind of jump into something just right off the back of that, which is when you were writing all of these books, don't you find that you'd write things, you'd express your point of view, your perspective, and you'd go back and read it and you'd go, what? Wait, me? I wrote that? Where did that come from? Did you have that kind of out-of-body experience in your writing journeys?
Yeah, what's interesting is, and I think this is all part of the human experience, which is, we're always evolving and changing based on our lived environment and any moment of time. So when I go back and read what I might have written earlier, whether it was a year ago or 5 years ago or a decade or 2 decades ago, yes, I don't necessarily recognize it as myself. It
Right?
is truly
It is
an out of
funny.
body experience because, my mind is somewhere else.
Well, and I
I've
think that
grown, changed in different ways.
Yeah, and I think that's where we're blessed because your experience, your perspective, all of the things that have brought you to where you are today, I think sometimes we all forget that, which I think is a lesson to every one of us, writing a book, not writing a book, on a big stage, not on a big stage. There is so much value in the knowledge and the experience and the institutional knowledge that we bring to our work, to our life, to our perspectives that we share. And they all have great value. And sometimes some of us forget that. So, I think it's really wonderful just to take a moment to acknowledge that. And, we maybe have had some practical moments that have forced us to kind of realize, like, wow, where did that come from? I didn't realize it, but this is who we are as humans and the human experience. So I want to ask one of my funnest questions, which is who was little Shiv? And growing up, wherever you were in the world, um, did you have any sense of what you wanted to be or do when you grew up? And are you doing anything remotely close to it?
Well, it's funny. I think uh, little Shiv and 48-year-old Shiv, in many respects, aren't that far apart. And it wasn't an intentional choice or direction. It's more now, as I look back on what I've done, I can sort of see the seeds and the beginning very much. So to give you an example, when I was 7 years old, I started. I lived in Mumbai and in India,
Hmm.
and with a lot of my mom's help, I started a magazine for all the kids in the building. It was like a 10-page little thing. And I was reporting on what was going on among our friendship circle and everything. And there were only like 10 copies of it made or 20 copies made for each other child. And everyone had to come to my apartment and they would design their own cover. So this was the whole collaborative UGC style
It's
piece of writing
incredible.
way back when. And really from that moment on, two strains have been central to everything that I do. The first is writing. I'm all about words and I'm all about reading. I was an obsessive reader as a child. I was also an obsessive writer. I wrote fiction in high school. College honors thesis was also creative writing, and that
Mm.
has continued to this day. And then the other strain, which was a little contradictory in many regards, was I was obsessed with technology. And I started with the video games and obsessing about them. But then that just kept on growing. And those two uh, anchors, have anchored really everything I've done and indirectly and subconsciously influenced a lot of life choices I've made, career choices, personal life choices, all of that. So it's always been about writing, it's always been about tech and finding mishmashy ways to bring the both together.
I love that. And I think it's so telling to your point of where you are today. I mean, you've had some significant impact in these companies that you've worked with, but to feel a sense of knowing and anchoring in the things that you're passionate about, that you're curious about, that you have come to excel at. It's really wonderful when you have that foundation. And I think many people are seeking that or looking for their reinvention moment that is going to anchor them in something that this moment in their lives has brought them to. And when I leap forward all the way to, for example, your book, I mean, really that opportunity to help people understand this crazy new world that we're living in around AI. And I'm just going to jump right to that and we'll go back and sort of talk about your journey. But how do you feel like the things that you've done along the way prepared you for this moment? And on the topic of reinvention, what were those big pivots in your journey to get you to this place and to feel comfortable and excited about how you're helping others understand and interpret the new world that we are living with that is so dictated by the force of AI?
Yeah, no, there's a lot there to unpack. So Kathy, what I'd say has helped me a lot along the way, especially as I embrace and study and advise around this AI transformative time, bizarrely, crazily transformative time that we live in, is I had an unconventional childhood. And by unconventional, I mean I grew up in six different cities on three continents. I was in India, I was in the Middle East, I did my undergrad in the States, grad school over in Europe. When I was really small, I was in Hong Kong. And as a result of that, I was always the outsider in any context. I mean, even to this day, here in America, I've been in the States decades now. There are many contexts where I am the outsider, I feel like the outsider. But being the outsider has always given me a more reflective point of view. And it's allowed me to observe and understand my surroundings and think about them or the context I'm in or who I'm with or what I'm doing a little more deeply and a little more objectively than maybe someone else standing next to me have been able to. So whether it's by being in Hong Kong and then Dubai and Delhi and Mumbai and London and Boston, um, being the outsider at times would be extremely uncomfortable. I'd struggle to know who I am and how I fit in. I wouldn't get everybody's jokes, they wouldn't get mine. There's no real place where I'd feel completely at home. That's probably a negative way to think about it. The positive is that when we think about what's going on with artificial intelligence and how much unknown there is, we all have a good grasp on the transformative nature. I believe fundamentally it's bigger than the mobile web, it's bigger than the mobile phone, it's bigger than the internet, it's bigger, I believe, than the industrial revolution, bigger than even the printing press. It's we're really on the cusp of something that over the next several decades is going to change the world around us beyond our imaginations, well beyond our imaginations. But to be at peace with that and know how to study it and how to advise and sort of be able to shine a torch in a small way for others, but to hold that torch steady versus it shaking or falling to the ground in fear or discomfort. That comes from my childhood and my upbringing and just by being the perennial outsider in any context. I mean, even to this day, when I'm in conversations with people, and it happens literally everywhere across the world, they say, you have an unusual accent. And I'm like, can you guess? And they're like, well, is it South African? Is it English? Is it there's a little bit of American in it, but it's definitely not American. Um, is it Lebanese? Uh, People just don't know, and it's part of who I
It's
am.
part of, Shiv, I'm sitting here nodding. The audience can't see it. I've been smiling and nodding since you started sharing this. It sounds like my story, and I love that. Growing up in Australia, living in Israel as a teenager with my family, moving to LA, always like literally how you described, like always feeling like I was on the outside looking in, and it wasn't a negative to me. It was an adventure. It was an opportunity to understand the world. We traveled the entire world as a youngster. I got to really see the highs, the lows, the different colors, the different shapes, the different sizes, all of it. And I was so beautifully exposed to a very big world at a very young age, enough to know and understand so much about what made the world go round that it wasn't just about the sort of, the four walls of the immediate world I was living in at the time, but knowing and having to be the new girl on the playground and walk up to people and walk up to them and go, hi, I'm the new girl. And to your point, where are you from? Why do you speak
Yes.
so funny? What is that accent? And back in
Yeah.
the day, we did not have the internet. People who didn't know who Paul Hogan in Australia was and all of that. And just it gives you a perspective. I think we're very blessed to have grown up in that way and also bring that to our perspective of being able to look at things in different ways and connect with people in different ways. And it is quite extraordinary. So as you saw, was smiling so much as you were
Yeah.
sharing your
Yeah.
story and so
Yeah.
relate to that.
It's incredible. And I can tell you at the time, I did not see it as a benefit. Certainly when I was growing up and even through my 20s, because I was trying hard to fit in because for in any context, a work context, a personal life context, I was never the safe option. I had the good fortune and I'm forever grateful for that to have mentors and leaders who were like, you know what? I'm going to take a bet on him. There's there's something different, but there's something there that will add to what we already have. And whether it was with new jobs or it was in social circles or with clients, but it was hard because I was self-aware. I could see what they were seeing and the
Yes,
decision-making process.
yes,
But that's part of it. That's part of the fun. And now in hindsight, I recognize, oh my gosh, having those lived experiences have made me who I am and have been incredibly and uniquely powerful. And in hindsight, I'm an idiot for not always embracing that and having it give me confidence versus, you know, having the opposite effect.
Right. But you know what? I think that's fascinating that you say that because, in a way, you might have had a quiet confidence, being
Mm,
that not the same. Look, my first day of school in eighth grade when I arrived in LA, I was the new girl. I had the Australian accent, and everybody said, well, let's make her the class president. So there were advantages to
yeah.
being the different person. I mean, not always, to your point, but I think it's an incredible parallel. It's one of the reasons I wrote my book, Reinvent Your Life. What are you waiting for? It was everybody would always say to me, you're so lucky. Look what you do. You've created this incredible business all your life. You get to do what you want, when you want, how you want. I said, I might have been lucky having the parents I did, having the upbringing I did, but the rest has been hard work. And I
Mm,
think likewise, you had to lean in a little harder. Nothing just showed up. You had to sort of raise your hand and say, hey, I'm the new guy. I don't fit in. You don't get my jokes, but
yeah.
here's what I do bring to the table. And being different is kind of cool. And I think it's really important for people to hear that, to know that when you're looking at the world in front of you, you're looking at your life. I mean, the pandemic caused a lot of people to have to rethink where they were and what they were doing. The irony in my reinvention book that came out on March 7th, 2020, a week before the
Right.
pandemic sent everybody home, was this request to pause and
Mm,
think about what you want to do with your life and to take stock on who you are, where you're at, where those challenges lie, and what you want to create. And then how do you surround yourself with the opportunities, the mentors, and identifying, as you said, the things you recognized early on in your life that sort of your passion was in tech and writing and all of that. Not everybody knows automatically, but it was an invitation, fortunately, through my book and through that period of time. Talk about turning lemons into lemonade. But everybody was starting to rethink that. So, my question here is what were those moments for you when you sort of had an aha moment? You said, okay, I would love to do XYZ now that I'm at this juncture. It might have been when you got one of these big corporate jobs and said, okay, this is great, but I'm ready for my next act. Or you were let go, or there was some downsizing. I mean, there are always moments, right? Whether they're invited or handed to you on a silver or not so silver platter, which are opportunistic. And it's a chance for self evaluation. It's this chance for self reflection, right? And a chance to
yeah.
really say, okay, this is my aha moment. What am I going to do with it? And it's where some people struggle and some people run, with excitement into it. What were some of those moments for you?
Yeah. It's funny. It's nearly as if I had to have the same aha moment a couple of times over for it to really sink in.
I love
So
that.
I'm gonna share maybe two or three quick anecdotes to
Please.
describe this. The first I would say was, so I went to a business specialty school in the Boston area for my undergrad, Babson College.
Yeah.
And and my dad was a career banker, and he was like, go get a business degree, it'll set you up well. And I sort of struggled with that, but I went along. I was a good obedient
Of
son.
course. Yes.
And my mom was like, go with the flow and see what happens. So I did that. But when I was at Babson, I'll never forget this moment. I was an honors student, but my honors advisor called me into his office one day and he said, Shiv, I just saw your report card from the previous semester and it is not adding up. I was like, what do you mean? And he was like, well, I see a lot of A's, congratulations. I see one or two B pluses, all good. And then I see this lonely C. What's the story with the C? And ironically, the C was in financial accounting, which he wasn't my teacher, but my professor, but that's a subject he taught. And I was like, I don't know. I just struggled with it. And he looked at me a little perplexed. And then he said, I've got a message for you. And I was like, oh my gosh, he's going to kick me out of the honors program. This is the moment, day of reckoning. He was like, I'm going to give you advice I don't want you to repeat because people can go a little crazy with it, but I'm completely at peace with the C in financial accounting. I was like, what do you mean? And he said, you should do even more to lean into your superpowers. And he said, we all have different superpowers.
Yep.
The sooner we recognize them, the sooner we depend on them, the happier, more successful, choose your metric or measure, fulfilling life we will have. And what that led me to, and this was my junior year, and it led me to starting a poetry organization on campus. I mean, can you believe that? A
I love it.
poetry organization at a business school in the Northeast, started by a guy who no one knew really where he came from, which then led me to writing fiction for my honors thesis, which half the class couldn't believe. They like, we're in a business school. And it was a lot of my friends were from big business families around the world. Others were going to be the next great entrepreneurs of America. And they're like, what are you doing? Like, you're missing the point. Why are you writing fiction? But he encouraged me to lean into my superpowers. And that was such an important and valuable lesson. And any little piece of advice I may have for anybody else is recognize each of us have our own superpowers. The sooner we're self-aware of them, and the sooner we figure out how to make them central to who we are and what we do every day, the better it is. And it'll turbocharge our lives, our careers, our happiness, all of it. So that was the one aha moment.
Right. I love that. And so, so powerful. I speak to that so often, and I think you're right. The moment we start to recognize it, it sort of helps us lead our lives in ways we never recognized. So thank you for that.
The second example or story also comes from when I was in college. We fast forward a year later, and now I was doing poetry. Well, I mean, I was still doing accounting and all of those other great subjects, but I was doing poetry. And I was having a conversation with my English professor, and I said, I've organized this group reading tonight, and I'm really worried that no one will show up. And she said, oh, that's the best thing. I was like, what do you mean? She's like, if you're doing something interesting and special, it doesn't matter who will show up. And before you know it, the empty room and the walls of that room will become your friend as well, or become friends with you. And that was so insightful. And what it taught me was, there's more to life than putting ourselves in the context of our social environment or for external validation or appreciation. And the biggest and the boldest steps I've made in my career, they've been because I've felt them to be inherently deeply the right thing to do, and I've been a little less concerned what the world around me would think. And
That's
and that's
brilliant.
such an important
Wow.
it's been such an important lesson, and right to the point where I've been comfortable in empty rooms, or going to rooms where someone else might say, oh, I'm too fancy for that room, I don't need to be here, or would walk out as soon as they step in. But staying in the room, doing what you set out to do, whether it was when I was on the agency side and choosing to move to California for a year, or when I went over to London to do a client assignment for 8 months, didn't know London very well, or returning back to grad school much later, or when I uh, was at Pepsi and we were launching this new Super Bowl campaign, and we were taking this big, in that time, it was really unique, user-generated content bet, or partnering with Twitter to do live streaming of a Katy Perry concert well before Twitter was known to be even able to do live streaming. It was about being comfortable with the risks and going into empty rooms and knowing that others will follow. And even if they didn't, I'd get immense learnings from it that would make me really much stronger.
So
So,
I have a
so I'd say,
question. Sorry, go ahead. I want to ask you something
yeah,
on this.
no. So that's just been an immense driver for me in many ways.
So I love what you just said and the context of the world we are now living in. where people are constantly seeking validation on social media. They're getting FOMO looking at what all their friends and business people and colleagues are doing that they're not doing, and they couldn't be there and they're not at that, and they wish they were, and they, all the things that social media does. You speak to the power of getting comfortable with your own interests, your own passions. I love that. You will never be alone if you really feel comfortable with who you are and what your passions are. And you don't need to have other people validate that in any way. How do we deal with this in this world of, constant bombardment of that social media feeling that it creates for so many? And now this next iteration of our world being AI, keeping up with things, not being as knowledgeable insight. I mean, there's so much there. You're teaching us, obviously, marketing for dummies with AI. I mean, like, all of this is just so completely relevant to the world we live in every day. It doesn't matter whether it's our business world, our personal world, all of that. How do we find that right calibration and that reminder? Like what you're saying is such an important reminder, but that still exists, and it's not going to disappear. It's just going to get more plus. So how do we manage that in our
Yeah.
lives?
I think that there are a few parts to this. So first, I just want to say something and then put it to one side, which is um, at some point in the future, AI engines could very likely be our overlords. But having said that, let's park that for a moment. We can come back to that. The only way I believe, from what I know, that we can address this dynamic is by double clicking and putting much greater emphasis on our lived experiences, our in-person relationships, our shared sense of community, our learning coming more through shared settings than individual ones, where all of a sudden, and I have a 16 and a 14-year-old, two boys,
Right.
but the four of us, my wife and I, and our two kids, it was just the end of the summer this weekend. School's just started. We went whitewater rafting on Saturday, whole year whitewater rafting,
Gorgeous.
on the American River. And
I've done that, by
the
the way. The Middle
yeah.
Fork.
Oh, yes.
Yes.
We didn't do Middle Fork, but we'll come to that
Lovely.
in a moment.
Yep.
Very impressive. But we did that, and the message to my boys was, and I didn't even need to say it explicitly, was that it's much better whitewater rafting than watching someone whitewater raft in your Instagram feed. And it's a very simple message, but incredibly, incredibly important. And then, we're creating those shared memories that stay with us in a way that nothing that we may share by having looked at the same post by a specific influencer carries through. So that's one piece. The other piece tied to this is, without a doubt, though, kids spend several hours a day on social media. It can be an incredibly corrupting influence. My second book, which I wrote with my wife, who's a clinical psychologist, Dr. Roni Luthra, unpacked that. But even with that, in that context of these social media influences, we can have shared experiences. So what I mean by that is, you know, every couple of months, I ask my boys, who are they following on Insta? I start following those same people. And then we end up having dinner conversations about what they're posting. And that sparks ideas for what we may want to do in the
Love that.
physical world.
Yep.
So we have to live with this virtual reality.
Yeah. No, that's an incredible point to create that. My boys are now 26 and 29. I always say how I was blessed that I got a lot more of their attention than most of my friends' kids at those young ages. So that sort of advice and those ideas about how to experience the world with them together, to be in harmony of that. People used to say, don't feed your kids McDonald's. Well, do it in moderation, monitor things, like really being in it, not pushing it to the side, is the way to sort of create that balance. And I think the adult version of that is creating, to your point, real life experiences. We were all just in Cannes together. You co-hosted the AI Trailers cocktail party, dinner party, sorry, with Julie Thompson. And it was a moment for some of us to come together and have extraordinary conversations. And on the back end of Cannes Lions, all that we had all witnessed for 4 or 5 days to come together and start to, dialogue on these moments and findings and shared experiences is critical. And we as an industry come together over and over and over again. And I think people are putting more value on that than ever before, realizing it's no good to hide behind, our computer screens and Zoom calls, but those in-person experiences are where the real magic actually does still happen, and then some.
Without a doubt, without a doubt.
So where do you see yourself in the next 2 to 5 years with all that is going on for you in this world? What's sort of your next reinvention moment, if I may? What's that about for you?
A very sloppy answer, which is I don't know, but I can tell you without a doubt, it's going to have a lot to do with writing. It's going to have a lot to do with the bleeding edge of technology. It's going to have a lot to do with the human AI relationship in the corporate world as it gets more complex, more complicated, and more stressful for everybody around us. I work with a lot of clients in Fortune, uh, 400, 500 companies. And what everyone is dealing with is where does the human lead? Where does the AI lead? What does it mean for how we structure our marketing teams, our product teams, and how do we win the battle or the competition around productivity, efficiency, all of that stuff, drive growth, while still staying human centered and
Creative.
ethically driven
Yeah,
and creative.
right.
And and at times, unfortunately, it feels like a dichotomy. I like to say it's a false dichotomy. Um, but that's a tension that we're all dealing with. And that's at
No
the heart of my
doubt.
thinking and the work I do.
Yeah, no, I love it. And no doubt. I mean, I deal with this in my agency every day, and I have an incredible staff. We've got a lot of different clients across a ton of different industries and categories. So I'm grateful every day for the power of AI and the access, the information, the productivity. I feel like my team has now multiplied three, fourfold because of their ability. But I always ask when they hand me something, show me something, I go, was that you? Was it AI? Was it a blend? Like
Mm,
where, and I want to make sure that they're also trusting in themselves, in their ability as they grow, especially with young people, to not lean too much on the AI capabilities that can help them get their job done, which I'm not opposed to. I want them to be the masters of AI. I want them to be ahead of the game and have those skill sets. But I also want them to have the confidence in their own opinions, the confidence in
mm,
their own voice, their own
yes.
creativity, their own ideas. So I push them more so to blend the two and to talk about it and really find a way to use both so that they have all those skill sets. It benefits all of us. And I think it's a really interesting time to sort of understand that and know how to use all the tools in our tool chest.
Yeah, without a doubt. I think the word blend and blending is so, so important. It's human and AI together. I'm talking it through because they're difficult questions. I'm working with a very large organization, and a lot of the team members are like, why should we lean in? Lean in means we're going to lose our jobs in 2 years' time or a year time. And I'm like, you know what? I have a lot of appreciation for you articulating that and talking about it because we have to talk it through and then their leadership choices actually because sometimes being human led and human first may mean giving up certain clients or not growing as fast as you may have alternatively, but that's a choice. And I think all of us, the stakes are higher in the corporate world for what it means to be human first and what are the trade-offs with that.
Yeah, and it's interesting. I think we're finding a lot of peers and friends who are in their 50s and 60s are getting a little worried about their role in these companies in the future. And the great irony is we need to maintain not only the humanization, but the experience and the knowledge of all that came before, because it helps keep the pendulum from swinging too far left, too far right, but enables us to find that powerful middle ground of the blend of it all. And
Yeah.
sometimes it requires a little adult supervision, as I like to say, to remind the young ones coming up what was, what came before, and what's possible that may not be in their sightlines. And I think there's a lot to be said for recognizing that in some of these bigger companies as they're looking at their workforce. And I only hope for those that, are out there running these companies that they have the ability to see that.
Without a doubt. It's interesting, and I'd see this at Visa, because at Visa, I reported to the global CMO and then
Hmm.
to the chief innovation officer, and we were engineering a transformation to make Visa from being a more physical card, uh, uh, old world company to be a digital first payment tech company. And then even at Lending Tree, where it was all about how do you make everyone get mortgages and loans online and have choice. With earlier waves, technological waves, there was a delta between the younger folks and the older ones who had the wisdom and experience, and the young ones who understood the technology well and were more fluent in it. What I'm finding in the context of AI is everyone, regardless of your age group, has the anxiety and the tension. Um, but it takes a different kind of leadership to help manage that tension and that anxiety and channel it in a
Mm,
strategic fashion.
yeah, no, I love that. Last question, if I may, fun one again. If you could have a dinner party with all the fascinating things you've done, people you've met, and there were three or four people that you could have at your table to have whatever type of conversation over a good drink, perhaps. Who would that be?
Um, Gosh, that's a hard one. So I'm going to go with a few cliches, but with
Go
a
for it.
different
It's
reason.
yours.
So I would want to have, and we're entering cliche country, Kathy, get ready. Um,
Okay.
it would be Mahatma Gandhi,
Mm,
Steve Jobs, Charles Dickens, and Barack Obama.
ooh, I'm
And
coming to that dinner party.
yeah, but the reason why is, you know, these were all incredible leaders, leaving massive fingerprints on the world, you know, uh, creating new products, new services, leading from the front, changing the course of history, changing course of literature, whatever it may be. But each of them made, some conscious, some unconscious, massive sacrifices to do what they did. And the biggest of sacrifices for each of them was around family. And I'm curious, and I'd love to understand how conscious they were of those sacrifices. And, the older they got, how comfortable they were with the trade offs that they were making. And by sacrifices with family, you know, each and one of them practically in some form or the other. Maybe Barack Obama to a much lesser degree. So it's a little unfair to put him in that category. But they had difficult relationships with their immediate and extended family,
Mhm.
or at the very least, could not give them anywhere near the amount of time that they
Yeah,
deserved.
you're right.
And that's a hard choice. I think
Yep,
each and every one of us
I
in
agree.
our own way deal with that. So I'd love to understand that, because the older I get, I see that as a choice, and it's a choice that I grapple with as well.
Yeah, that's a beautiful perspective around that sort of that group of people that you're pulling from that, and what an extraordinary conversation that would be. And I think it is something that we all grapple with in all of the balancing act that we're constantly doing in life. It feels like it's more and more. And as we get older, you've got your children, you've got your parents, you've got family, friends, all the things in your life that matter, and those choices and where those compromises lie, and that balance for the greater good, for your greater good, whatever that is. It's a fascinating idea. So thank you for sharing that and for just bringing that to light. Ironically, I saw a handful of my college girlfriends this weekend, had a beautiful beach day, and we were talking about what we all went through as working mothers, balancing our
Mm.
children. We were kind of all sharing our version of our own anecdotes of when they were 3 and 8 and 10 and the things that we missed and the traveling we had to do. And we didn't have FaceTime then on our phones. We couldn't get on ours, like see the kids. We have to get on like the hotel room phone and help them with their homework. And we didn't even have the access that families can have today for that connectivity. And we were having this conversation. So I just sort of got chills when you brought that up because we were
Mm.
literally just kind of delving into that. So that would be powerful. And you,
Mm.
Shiv, are an extraordinary human. Thank you so much for being here today. I love that you and I are getting to know each other to get much better. I know for a fact already, and I remember a funny conversation we had in the lobby at the Carlton Hotel while we were there about, your age and how old I thought you were. And we had some good laughs, and I feel like there's a whole
We're the
lot more
same
of that.
age. I
Yes,
remember
that's
that.
right. That's right.
You're my age, Kathy, or younger, maybe.
That's why I like you so much. But thank you. I cannot wait for more of this and seeing you again soon and finding more time to connect and do all the conversations and deep dives that I feel that are going to be in our future. Thank you again for your time and sharing yourself today with this audience. We're going to make sure that everybody knows where to get your book, how to reach you, and all of that in the show notes. So please, everyone who is tuning into this, connect and follow and certainly get a copy of the book. And Shiv, thank you. Congrats to the success. I think you're in like your third round of printing now, if I'm not
Yes.
mistaken on it. So a worldwide success. And how many languages is your book in now?
So this one's already up to four or five languages. Yeah, with
Brilliant.
a few more
Well,
in the
we all need
pipeline.
it more than anything. So, a big shout out for you and your book.
Oh,
And
thank you. Thank you so much. And this was such a fun conversation to have. Yeah.
likewise. And to all those tuning in, thank you so much for being here. For more information, certainly check the show notes. Go to the reinventionexchange.com for former episodes, blogs, stories to access my book, Reinvent Your Life. What are you waiting for? The foreword was written by the wonderful, rest in peace, Quincy Jones. And lots of great stories with peers and friends from around the globe. So thank you, everybody, and happy reinventing.